All right, let's dive in. We're about to crack open a 2,000-year-old story that starts, believe it or not, like a carefully researched history project. Today, we're taking a look at the Gospel of Luke to see how its author used a super organized narrative to launch a radical, world-changing idea.
Now, the version we're using for this journey is a special one. It's from 1923 by a scholar named A.T. Robertson. And his whole goal wasn't just to translate the words, it was to keep what he called the delicate nuances of the original Greek. So the idea is that we get to hear this story a little more like its very first audience did. Kind of cool, right?
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to talk about what makes this book and our translation so unique. Then we'll dig into what the author even means by an orderly account. After that, we'll watch a pretty controversial ministry get off the ground, break down its wild teachings, and then zero in on a huge theme, welcoming the lost. Okay, part one, a unique translation. It turns out, just like his translator, Robertson, the person who actually wrote this gospel, had a super clear purpose right from the get-go. I mean, look at this. Right at the top, Yuka's like, "Hey, Theophilus, I'm not just telling you some stories I heard. I'm putting together an orderly account so you can be certain about what you've been taught." He's basically framing his book as a credible, structured historical narrative. He's saying, this isn't myth, this is real. So, orderly account, it sounds impressive, but what does it actually look like? Well, Luke doesn't make us wait. He immediately kicks things off with this brilliantly structured story of two parallel births, putting his whole method on display. And the way he does it is just, wow. It's this incredible 1-2 punch. First, an angel shows up to an old priest, Zechariah, and says, "You're going to have a son, John." Then, boom, 6 months later, the same angel pops up to a young woman, Mary, and announces the birth of Jesus. The two stories are just woven together beautifully, from announcement to birth. This is not random storytelling. It's deliberate, it's structured, it's orderly. And tucked inside this neat structure, Luke plants these thematic bombshells. Just listen to this line from a song Mary sings. It's all about a world getting turned completely upside down. Princes get knocked off their thrones while the humble are lifted up. This whole idea of reversal, it is the key to understanding everything that's about to happen. Which brings us right to section 3, launching a ministry. Those two babies from the orderly birth story, they're all grown up now, and the story is about to kick into high gear. First up is John the Baptist, and he is your classic wild-eyed prophet out in the middle of nowhere yelling his head off. He's literally the opening act, the voice in the desert getting everyone ready for the main event. His whole job is to prepare the way. And then, Jesus steps onto the stage. His very first public move is to walk into the synagogue in his hometown, read this famous passage from the prophet Isaiah about bringing good news to the poor, and then he just drops this line. "Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your ears." He's not saying someday, he's saying right now with me. I mean, it is so bold, so radical that the people from his own town literally try to throw him off a cliff for it. What a start. Now, after that dramatic entrance, Jesus doesn't just go it alone. He starts building a team right away. He picks an inner circle of 12 guys. And Luke is really specific here. He says, Jesus named them apostles, which means those who are sent out. So right from the beginning, the plan was never to keep this message contained. It was always designed to spread. So that brings us to what he was actually teaching. We've seen who he claimed to be, but what was his message? Well, it turns out it was every bit as countercultural as his first appearance. And here's that theme of reversal again. But this time, it is just laid out so clearly. In this famous sermon, Luke sets up these powerful contrasts. He says the poor, the hungry, the sad, they're the happy ones. And then he turns around and warns the rich, the satisfied, and the comfortable. It's a total flip of everything the world tells you is a successful life. A lot of his teaching came through these little stories called parables, and they were usually in response to a question. And one of the most famous parables ever told came after a lawyer tried to trap him with this question, "But who is my neighbor?" A seemingly simple question that got a world-changing answer. So Jesus tells a story. A guy gets beaten up, robbed, left for dead. A priest, a total religious insider, sees him and walks right on by. Then a Levite, another religious official, does the exact same thing. Then a Samaritan comes along. Now you have to understand, for his audience, Samaritans were the enemy. They were total outsiders. And he's the one who stops, patches the guy up, and even pays for his medical bills. He's the hero of the story. And here is the genius twist. Jesus turns to the lawyer and asks, "So, which one of these three acted like a neighbor?" And the lawyer can't even say the word Samaritan. He just mumbles, "The one who showed mercy." Jesus' final command totally flips the original question on its head. He doesn't give a definition of who your neighbor is. He tells the guy to be a neighbor. It's a huge shift from identity to action. And this focus on action, especially action toward outsiders, brings us to our last big idea: welcoming the lost. Because, when you start behaving this way, it's going to create some friction. In fact, it creates this central conflict that drives the rest of Luke's entire story. This one quote just nails the central problem. The religious leaders, the Pharisees, were constantly grumbling about the company Jesus kept. Tax collectors were seen as traitors, sinners were anyone who didn't follow the rules. And Jesus wasn't just talking to them, he was eating with them, which in that culture was a huge act of acceptance and friendship. And this wasn't just some small disagreement. This was the main charge against him, over and over again. So what was his answer? How did he possibly justify spending all his time with the people everyone else had written off?
Well, how do you think he responded? He told them stories. He tells this incredible trio of parables back to back about a shepherd who risks everything for one lost sheep, a woman who turns her house upside down for one lost coin, and a father who throws a massive party for one lost son who comes home. With these stories, he completely reframes the whole argument. These people aren't a problem to be avoided, they're a treasure to be found.
And that brings us all the way back to the beginning. Luke said he was writing an orderly account. But what if the order he's really trying to create isn't just a chronological timeline? What if the whole point of his carefully structured story is to completely reorder our values? To argue that the people on the margins should be at the center, that the outsider is actually our neighbor, and that the most valuable thing in the entire world is the one who was lost and is now found.
Hebrews 10:38. But my righteous one shall live by faith.